Sunflower in the Forest of Twisted Memories by Alberto Martin Tabora. Chapter 8. Twisted Memories. Sunflower and I miraculously ran upstairs, out the hatch, and outside with the orb. Sunflower was holding it. We ran as far from the facility as we could to get ourselves to a safe distance. "We have it now! What do we do?" I yelled. "I don't know," Sunflower yelled back. She inspected the core after dropping her crossbow onto the ground. Now that it was outside, the bright light inside the golden outer casing wasn't as headache-inducing as it was inside Jonathan's hall. Sunflower kept fiddling with it. "Sunflower, listen to me." I put my hands on her shoulders. "What?" I think we should destroy it," I suggested. "What? No! What if it kills us all? Wipes everything away? What if it's the only way to get our memories back?" Sunflower yelled at me. She yanked herself off my hands and turned away from me like she was protecting it from me. Loud noises and bangs could be heard from the facility nearby. "We don't have slaves to bring us iron to feed into this thing. We have to take the risk. Take our chances," I yelled at her. "I won't do it! I won't risk it!" Sunflower stepped away from me, crying. The hatch doors burst open and Jonathan crawled out of it. He began walking towards us. "We have to run, come on!" Sunflower took my hand while holding the core under her other arm to keep it away from me. I didn't budge. "No! We have to try, please," I urged. Eric, Andrea, and Lenny followed Jonathan outside. They looked so beat up and hurt, but strong enough to rope Jonathan back into battle. But Jonathan was too strong. He shook them off, one by one, as they tried to stop him. Sunflower looked over at him and then back at me. She thought for a moment. "Please," I said calmly. Sunflower gave me another moment of just staring at me. Jonathan didn't even try to run at us. He thought we would be too scared to run from him. He found no need to catch up to us. Sunflower set the core down, grabbed the crossbow, and aimed it. I aimed my gun, and we both shot the core multiple times. By the fourth time, everything went blank. Eric stopped in his tracks. I was a young apprentice and master of the martial arts. I studied it with grand wizardry and learned how to become a skilled fighter and user of mystic magic. I earned the purple belt that I don and the skills I hold with my magic-infused katana. I remembered clearly what my mission was. The day I last saw my sensei Sam alive. We walked across the front of our great beehive school building. Sam paused our walk and spoke to me in his gentle voice. "I sense much courage in you, Eric. You hold the right amount of determination." "Yes, master. I will ward off evil without anger, strike wisdom and not fear into the hearts of my enemies," I told him. "You forget one very special thing, young Eric." His old eyes widened. "Be true to yourself. Never forget your mission. Then you have truly become what you were meant to be." I bowed and told him I'd never forget his gentle words. He made me into what I am, into what I was always supposed to be. But that's only what I thought. He only helped me become me. Andrea stopped flapping her wings and slowly came down onto the ground. "I was sent here from the deeper forest. My parents no longer had the ability to support me. I found Lenny to be my true lover and stayed here for him. He showed me home. He showed me family. I gained independence and learned to become my own person. Eric taught me witchcraft and Lenny taught me how to survive." Lenny dropped his crowbar. "I came here after being crowned an elven knight, but I became a criminal, diabolical scoundrel who stole and broke other goods. I disgraced my stature as a knight of the forest. I'm a menace to my friend Eric, and he only appreciates me for my skills. He never liked who I was. I was on a journey of self-improvement, so he would enjoy my presence. I practiced archery instead of thievery. I gained new skills, learned how to play music. But I never knew if it would be enough to make Eric a true friend to me. Was I enough for him? Was I enough for Andrea? I nearly got her roped into my antics. She's the one who really helped me want to change for the better. I taught her so much, yet she taught me a lot in return." Jonathan gave up walking towards us. He turned around and walked slowly back to his facility.
"I was a failure at every turn. All I did was insult, destroy, and ruin my relationship to everyone around me. Or maybe I was misunderstood. and everyone treated me like scrap. A tossed piece of rotten meat. I'm ugly on the inside and on the outside. Maybe this is why I kept seeking greater power.
Jonathan went back through his hatch, slowly and sadly. I remembered stealing a raft, way back then. I was running from something. I didn't know what it was. I remember sailing the lake. A memory came back to me of blue and red flashing lights. The memory of feeling weak and tired, but feeling found and safe. What did I run away from? Why did I come back here? I looked up at Sunflower after figuring myself out. I still had no name, but I wanted to know what Sunflower remembered. Sunflower looked at me in surprise. I was an emissary of the forest, an envoy from the fields, like a goddess to the trees around us. Sunflower's words only confused me. I couldn't grasp how she was describing herself. I was meant to befriend everyone who walked under the branches and leaves of the forest and provide them with safety and care and friendship, she continued. I was put on this world to cherish nature, the body and mind. A princess of the forest. What? I battled, trying to ignore my incoming memories to figure Sunflower out. She looked at me like she saw me for the first time ever. It was with me from the beginning, she said with a smile. What was? I asked. My ability to appreciate life the way it is, even when I didn't remember what I was here for. My purpose is to be a friend to all, bring others together, and appreciate life. Sunflower smiled and put her hands together. Was she really just a hippie this entire time? It would explain the name and the way she dressed. I didn't know if I was okay with it, but nothing really changed anyway. As she said, without her memories, who she really was still within her through and through. I sat down on the ground. Sunflower sat in front of me. Boop, she tapped my nose. You were right. Destroying the core was the key. I said nothing. I sat there staring blankly at Sunflower's lap. But I wasn't looking at anything. I was lost in my thoughts. I felt unaccomplished. Something was still missing. This was it, right? This was what I was missing. This was what everyone was missing for years, and we finally reobtained it. Except for me. I only lost my memories when I washed up on the shore. Why are you sad? Sunflower asked. She tilted her head almost upside down to look at my face. She seemed to be acting all playful and bubbly again. She sat up straight again. I've been thinking. I should get or make a dress that has a hole in the front, just to show my belly button. It might not be the real reason for my name, but it's still a viable connection in my eyes. Do you think that would be cute? Sunflower put her hand on my leg. Twig? It was Cameron. I looked up at her. My name was Cameron. Cameron, Sunflower repeated. She smiled. I like that. But I'm still gonna call you Twig. I got way too used to it. Suddenly, the side of the facility exploded and burst open. I frantically stood up. Sunflower carefully stood up as well, holding onto my arm. A giant creature emerged from the gaping hole in the facility and from the ground. Jonathan stood next to it and led it over to everyone else. Behold, he yelled, my brother, the great giant orc himself, Troy! Troy roared a scary, gargling, gravelly scream. Eric, Andrea, and Lenny all grouped up next to me and Sunflower. What do we do? Eric yelled. You're asking us that? You led every plan up to this point, I yelled at him. I didn't know he had that beast down there, Eric scolded. Troy roared again and pushed some trees down. No, the forest, Sunflower yelled. We all slowly backed away. Jonathan stood back and watched the carnage unfold. Wait, Lenny got a devilish idea. The trees. Do you think if one fell on top, it would hurt him? What? You want to bring down the trees too? Sunflower angrily responded. Well, if we're lucky, we'd only have to do it to one of them, Lenny replied. But how are we going to push or cut down those things? Andrea asked. A saw? I shrugged. I think getting one out of my shop is out of the question, Eric stated. Wait, I know. Zupank. He owns tons of tools, Sunflower suggested. I'll go run to him now. All of you can find a way to keep him at bay. Eric readied his katana. Andrea readied her potions. Lenny readied his crowbar, and I picked up the gun that I had. It seems like Jonathan won't become a threat, even if we fight that thing. He must know it can take all of us out at once, Eric determined. How do you know? Lenny asked. My dear friend, Eric looked back at him. I can just tell a lot about everyone I meet. I have my intuition. Eric charged the creature as it scraped at the ground, possibly digging for something beneath the soil to throw at us. Eric ran past one of Troy's legs and swung his katana at it. A red glow beamed up Troy's leg. Troy roared in pain and turned around as Eric began running a circle around the monster.
He's an orc Hulk, Jonathan laughed. You won't last 5 minutes before all of you satisfy his dinner time.
Andrea threw potions of different sorts at Troy. None of them did anything. He's too large for my potions to take effect, Andrea yelled in frustration. What about those ribbons? Lenny asked. Andrea turned to Lenny and looked at him longingly. You distract him and I'll trip him. Andrea hugged Lenny and they both charged into battle. Eric hit Troy with his sword a couple more times. His katana charged up and was ready for an ultimate strike. Eric looked worried, like whatever his katana could do next would do nothing on Troy. His previous strikes merely scratched the orc's skin. Lenny climbed up a tree while yelling at Troy for his attention. Hey boy, up here you slimy dog! Troy looked up while Andrea snuck underneath and got her ribbons ready. Eric saw an opportunity as Troy stood up taller. He flung his katana while jumping up and struck Troy's abdomen. A powerful surge exploded onto the beast's stomach, and it blew Eric back onto the ground. He lost grip of his sword and fell to the mulch below. He didn't get up for another minute. Troy roared in pain again and kicked Andrea away before she could make the first wrap around the orc's legs. Lenny lost balance on the tree and nearly fell right off. I stood in horror doing nothing. I remembered the gun in my hand. I aimed and shot at the beast's face. The large splinters got lodged into his cheeks and nose. Troy roared louder than he had previously and tried to charge at me. At that moment, Sunflower returned with Zupank, who had a large tree saw. Sunflower had a bunch of rope around her arm. We're back! I got some leftover kite rope, too, she told me. She didn't know that Troy was coming right at us. Distract him! I yelled to the others. Lenny got his grip back and tore a branch off the tree he was on. He threw it at Troy's head and got the beast to look up at him. Troy put his hand on the tree to throw it down before Eric suddenly stood behind one of his legs and began striking him repeatedly with his sword.
Come on, Troy, mash them!
Jonathan rooted for his monstrous brother. Sunflower took my hand and dragged me over to the small play structure she first brought me to when she swooped me off the beach. We hid under it. What are we doing? We have to help them! I was confused by Sunflower's decision to hide. We have a plan to devise. Zupank was offering ideas, Sunflower began. We heard Andrea scream in terror, but we had no time to worry about it at the moment. Here's what we'll do. We pick a tree and start cutting into it as fast as we can. Zupank will help us do it in the most efficient way. Well, you and Zupank will. What? Oh, wait, hold on. Zupank and I will cut the tree? I interrupted. What about you? I will help direct Troy into the path of the tree and keep him there. We're going to then use this rope to pull the tree down onto him, Sunflower finished explaining. Are you sure it's going to work? I asked her. There's only one way to see. Sunflower grabbed my hand. We flew out from under the play structure. Sunflower directed me to a tree. I ran over to it, and Zupank met me at the tree with the saw. We gotta keep a fast and steady rhythm, okay? Zupank went right to it. Left, right. Come on, let's go. Zupank and I went right into it, cutting at the tree. It was fairly thin enough that it wouldn't take us terribly long to cut through. Sunflower grabbed her crossbow and shot at the beast's face like I did before. Troy directed his attention to Sunflower and began to walk towards her. I tried to cut a little faster, but Zupank gave me resistance. Slower, kid, or I could jam the saw. Come on, left, right. I kept getting nervous for Sunflower. She was putting herself in the destructive path of that beast, and it had every intent to destroy and kill in its eyes. Eric hit its leg with another strong blow from his katana. Troy directed his attention again and began turning around. No, wait, back over here, Sunflower yelled. My arms began getting tired, but I moved through the pain. Zupank eventually stopped the saw and took it out of the tree. Why are we stopping? I asked. Cut diagonally downwards, come on, Zupank urged. I checked the fight and noticed one advantage to our plan. Jonathan had no way of seeing us cut down the tree. Troy remained in the way. Sunflower began shooting the monster in the head again. Troy directed his attention to Sunflower one more time. Andrea flew around the beast and used her ribbons to grapple Troy's neck. She tugged the beast's head closer to the ground so Sunflower could have a better shot. Meanwhile, Lenny kept throwing branches down from the top of another tree. He yanked them off with the help of his crowbar. "How's that tree?" Sunflower yelled. "Almost there!" Zupank yelled back. Troy swiped at Andrea and threw off her balance in the air. Andrea fluttered around and accidentally let go of her ribbons, of which Troy ripped off his throat. The saw finally reached the first cut we made into the tree. Zupank struggled to take the piece we cut around out of the tree. I tried at it too, but it wouldn't budge. "We need to cut it more," I told him. "There's no time." Zupank shook his head. I looked around and saw Lenny above. "Lenny, we need your help!" Lenny jumped from tree to tree and slid down the one we cut. We used his crowbar to rip the piece right out of the trunk. Sunflower noticed and ran over to us with the rope. She took it off her arm and wrapped it around the tree a few times before giving an end of it to me and the other end to Zupank. Sunflower looked back, and Troy was right where we needed him. "Now pull! Pull as hard as you can!" Sunflower grabbed a part of the rope. We began to pull. Eric rushed over and grabbed the end of the other side behind Zupank. Andrea fluttered down to help them. Lenny, Sunflower, and I tugged at her side. The tree began to crack. Troy looked at us all in confusion and prepared an attack. I let go of the rope for a second to grab my gun and shoot him. A large splinter shot him right in the eye. He screamed in pain. We all pulled as hard as we could on the tree and got it to start tilting. Jonathan noticed what was going on and rushed over. "That's enough!" Eric and his team just made it around the other side of Troy before Jonathan picked Eric up by the back of his robe. "I was meant to rule over you all!" Jonathan snorted into his face. He threw Eric several feet behind him. He hit the ground hard. Everyone gave the tree another good tug, and it cracked and crumbled at its base as it tilted further and loomed over Troy. "Timber!" Zupank yelled out. Everyone got out of the way, and the tree slammed right on top of Troy, falling full force onto his head before pinning the rest of him into the ground. The end of the tree smashed into the wall of the school building and ripped a large hole right through it. The force of the fall made the ground rumble. Whatever was left of the memory core shined its light, albeit faded. It shined again before it popped. A flood of pages filled the air. "No!" Jonathan yelled. "The book!" "Grab as many pages as you possibly can," Sunflower ordered. I helped her grab everything that flew out of the core. Jonathan climbed over Troy's corpse and stared us down. His hood flew off. His ugly green mug was covered in darker green freckles. He had a short ginger bowl cut. It was no contest. He was an orc too. I felt a little less intimidated seeing his actual face, but I wasn't going to take it as a sign he would let us off the hook. Sunflower and I climbed onto the fallen tree and ran into the school building. Jonathan chased us in. The room that the tree smashed into was a gymnasium. The only exit was at the other end. Sunflower and I managed to run right to it and keep on booking it down the hall. "Where are we going?" "Wherever we'll have enough time to rip these pages in half," Sunflower said. Why do we need to do that?" I asked, trying to hold on to my breath. He wants it, clearly. We can't let him have it." I looked behind us and saw Jonathan trying to keep up. His large body slowed him down in comparison to our smaller physiques. Sunflower and I made it to the other end of the hallway. We went through an exit that took us out to the other end of the building. Sunflower found a board laying nearby to hold the door shut by sticking it to the handles. At the back of the school was another small asphalt court with a mini baseball field at one end and more play structures at the other, one of them being an old-fashioned fire truck made of metal poles. Sunflower began tearing all the pages. I did the same. We finally finished tearing every page up. Everything changed. The torn pages turned into floating orbs of light. They began floating upwards towards the sky, where they faded away and disappeared. Jonathan reached the door, but didn't bother to pry it open. He pounded on the glass and fell to his knees. I looked up at the lights as they floated upwards and disappeared. I then looked at Sunflower, who was staring right into my eyes with a look of happiness. I smiled back at her. We held hands, but Sunflower's smile went away. I wasn't ever what I thought I was, Sunflower said. A confused look dawned onto my face, before I saw it too. Back when I was in elementary school, we would all play together after classes were over, right here at the school's playground. We would play all sorts of games together and have hours of fun. Slowly, we all moved on and went through middle school and then high school. Most of us were ready to take on college. Some of us even prepared to move away. Johnny brought us all back together. All of us. Eric, Lenny, Andrea, and Sunflower. We all liked her a lot. She helped bring us closer together and maintain the peace in our friendships. Johnny started the reunion, but used it to convince us all to stay together and stick around forever. He even brought his brother Troy. Although, as much as we liked Johnny's idea, we were already facing separate lives. We weren't able to give all of it up just to relive our childhood memories. Those times were already over. During the reunion, Johnny broke into our old elementary school, Great Beehive Elementary. Sunflower thought it was funny and went with him. We followed the two of them into the library of the school. Sunflower found all of our favorite childhood books. However, hidden behind a shelf in the back, Sunflower found an old book that seemed to have been hidden away on purpose. Johnny took the book to show it to the rest of us. It was titled Memories from the Forest. It seemed like a simple and innocent children's fantasy story, with elves, goblins, orcs, fairies, wizards, and a princess of the forest who kept the harmony between them. Johnny found a scary-looking incantation on the back page. We went outside and he chanted it as a joke. The book began to float out of his hands. A light spilled from the pages and blasted across the whole area. A golden orb formed around the bright light, and it sent a shockwave across the entire town. New trees popped up everywhere, creating a massive forest. Eventually, nothing but utter chaos ensued. In a short few minutes, the neighborhoods around began getting destroyed by trees. A large jungle popped up just a few blocks away. Johnny's body began to turn green. He fell over and groaned. I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. I saw everyone else evacuate their homes, drive away, scream, and run. I wanted to do the same. The fear I felt got the better of me, and I chased safety as it quickly flew into the distance. I left them all there. Eric, Andrea, Lenny, Johnny. I left Sunflower there too, and we both have had a very special friendship for years. We never lost contact from each other. We were two peas in a pod, and I left her there. But she didn't leave me. She chased after me. I didn't even know until it was too late. I ran to the beach and found a raft. I didn't even question why it was there, likely to just be a school project left there by a group of students. I took it anyway, putting my faith into it, and I set sail onto the lake. I looked back and saw Sunflower. She stood on the beach. I felt terrible, selfish, cruel. I had left my best friend behind. But there was no going back. The city was in a panic. The town was transforming. I felt like there was no going back. Trapped by cowardly feelings, I let the raft carry me across the lake. I woke up to the night sky on a different beach across the lake. Red and blue lights flashed over me. As far as I knew, I was just orphaned. I found a shelter that helped me. Even though I graduated high school, I was my own adult, yet given a home to stay at with a host family housing foster kids. I never told anyone what I ran away from. For 3 years. I kept it all to myself. One day, I felt like I overstayed my welcome. I should have been a college student, but instead leeched off of some poor host family. I never knew why they even took me in. They couldn't pay for me to go to college. I couldn't find a job. I was stuck. Until I wasn't. I thought about what I left behind and let years of regret and my own selfish act from back then torment me until I decided to do something about it. By some miracle, the raft I sailed on was still there, and it was still intact, covered in sand and vines. I cleaned it off and took it back out onto the lake. 3 years of age weakened the entire thing, and I was luckier it made most of the trip back. I remembered the day after my trip across the lake. My mind went fuzzy, trying to think about it. Because it was the day I had lost everything about who I was. The forest reset me. But now, I am back. I am once again Cameron. I assumed that Sunflower remembered everything by this point as well. I am so sorry, I quietly apologized. Sunflower shed tears. Oh, why'd you leave? I was so scared. I fell to my knees and cried. The past 3 years have been nothing but tormenting myself for what I've done to you and everyone else. Sunflower grabbed my hands and brought me back up. Hey, it's okay. We're all fine. We were all fine. We lived. We were okay, she assured me. What if it wasn't? I sobbed. I left you all there to die. But we didn't die. Sunflower shook my hands, like she was trying to snap me out of it. It's not like we remembered you anyway. In reality, there was no harm done. I still shouldn't have done what I did, I said. Once I got back to the others, Johnny messed with that core thing, kept it to himself, and one day just erased everything. When we destroyed the core, our memories were, I don't know, they're all twisted. Sunflower had her hands on my shoulders. That book. It turned you on to things from that book. It turned the whole town into some weird fantasy landscape, I realized. And that core must have been what would have made us think we were all characters from the book, Sunflower added. We have to see the others. I put my hands on Sunflower's shoulders as well. Sunflower and I walked back to everyone else. Jonathan, by this point, had already walked back. Everyone else was arguing with him on what he did and the damage he caused. Jonathan slowly turned back into his former self. Troy, on the other hand, remained a casualty. I apologized to everyone for leaving. Some of them were mad at me too, but they understood why I did what I did. Everyone was scared and nearly ran away as well. They were the only ones that stuck together, but they nearly didn't. They became trapped with each other and became a community with everyone else who had their memories wiped within the radius that the memory core could reach. The outside world must have thought that everyone here died, and they never came to rescue those who were left behind. It made me feel better about what I did, because I was the only one who did go back. Knowing what we knew, everyone still decided to make our lives where we stood. Maybe someday we would rejoin the outside world, but there was a lot of recovery still ahead of us all. Everyone else would have to change away from a life they knew for 3 years. It was an effort to be slowly made. Another thing that changed was the magic that left us. Sunflower's belt never worked the way it did again. Andrea lost her fairy wings. Even Leah became human again. Lenny lost his elf ears and agility, but we never lost our friendship. We recovered Jonathan's slaves and brought them all back into the community. Some of them left for the outside world, while others decided to stay. A few days after everyone regained their memories, Sunflower and I visited Johnny. He was held in his cell within the Great Beehive Elementary building. We thought time in a slammer would be the best way for him to repay for the crimes he committed and the casualties that he allowed under his own hands. Everyone got to keep their memories from when they had no memories. Johnny still had a lot of Jonathan still in him. Sunflower still tried to give him a helpful talk. Johnny? She stood in front of the door to his cell. I'm sorry about your brother, Troy. She gave her condolences. I would have wanted us to all stick together after high school as well, but I wish I could have just told you back then that it would be better to just cherish what we had instead of trying to remake it. We could have still had reunions and get-togethers. Look, I miss those days too. We had so much fun and we were all the best of friends. I wanted to feel what it was like to live those days again, but it just doesn't work that way. Life isn't a fantasy, despite whether or not you consider what we did live through to be one. I just wish you could have seen that. It may be over and those days are gone, but it's not like it didn't exist in the first place. It's better to look back and love that it happened rather than to recreate what you just can't get back again. Johnny stayed silent. Sunflower answered to his silence by taking my hand and having us walk away. Sunflower took me to the beach. We both breathed in the breeze from the lake and sat quietly together in the sand. Remember that house in that thick jungle? Sunflower asked me. Yeah? That house was mine, she revealed. She showed me a picture she'd been carrying around. I went back yesterday when you went to the kite fields alone. The picture depicted a young sunflower with her parents. Her dad had the same color hair and a mustache. Her mom had brown straight hair, but Sunflower had her mom's eyes. They looked so happy. "This was your family?" I asked, despite the obvious. "I found it when I remembered it was my own home this whole time," Sunflower explained. "I don't know if I'll see them again. I don't know if they're even alive. But having met someone like you to stick around has helped me cope with those feelings of a loss that I don't even know is, well, a loss." "I don't know where my parents are either," I admitted. "They didn't really treat me right anyway. But I'm glad to have you as well. You turned my life around. In a literal sense, too." Sunflower looked at me. "What do you mean?" "It wasn't just our friends I came back for. It was mostly you," I admitted to her. "It was?" Sunflower said with a calm, surprised tone. "You were the last person I saw when I sailed away. You were the only one to chase me when I ran off," I said. "You were the one I thought about the most." Sunflower held my hand. "You still are my best friend," she said with a smile. She looked like she was on the verge of tears. "Do you think someday we really could be more?" I asked with no hesitation, no anxiety. The question just came out straight. "Maybe not now. But I won't rule anything out," she responded. A silence fell over us for a moment. "I don't think I'll be ready to see the outside world again for a while. I just want to stay here with you and the others and whatever this place got turned into. Some odd bay village." I scoffed at whatever I was trying to call the place. "That's okay with me," Sunflower said. "As long as we can make our own precious, untwisted memories from here on out." Sunflower and I stayed for a very long time. When we eventually rejoined the outside world, I never forgot about the magic I felt in this forest of twisted memories. The end. Sunflower and the Forest of Twisted Memories by Alberto Martin Tabora. Author's statement: How Sunflower's Story Came to Be. I hope you enjoyed reading Sunflower and the Forest of Twisted Memories, or as it was titled before, Lost Memories. I could never figure out which title was the best, but both are the correct ways to title this story. I like to call this story an ultimate homage to my childhood. It's rather the official homage to my childhood if I had to call it anything other than its title. From late 2002 to 2013, I lived in the small town of Bay Village, Ohio. When I was going through elementary school, we wouldn't just go home after school. During the spring, we would play with our friends at the playground set next to the school. Eric, Lenny, Eve, Leah, even Jonathan are all based on real people that I knew back then. In fact, Jonathan was based on my first best friend, Johnny. I made him the villain out of irony. We were inseparable back in the day. We would play all sorts of games after school, from zombie tag, getting chased by and hiding from a monster, who was usually played by Johnny's older brother Troy, cops and robbers, and in a lot of cases, we would roleplay having stores, where we would sell and buy things with mulch. Those days at the playground gave me a lot of the childhood that I'm forever grateful for having. I had a lot of great friends, both real and imaginary. Sunflower was created during times when we needed to hide from each other for the sake of the game. As a kid, I loved role-playing with myself. I would pretend to talk to someone and act scenes out like I was in a movie or TV show. One of those imaginary friends that came along and stuck around was Sunflower. She gained her peculiar name much later on in life, but in my mind, she always kinda looked and acted the same, remaining the same character. Sunflower was one of my favorite original characters ever. One time in the summer when I was around 9 years old, I pretended to marry her. Needless to say, my mom was pretty weirded out, and Sunflower and I decided to remain friends. Things changed when puberty hit, and the way I saw the world was very different. At the same time, I was very fascinated with art, human anatomy, and I decided to practice my skills. I love art and sculpture of human forms. I love them of both sexes, but of course I lean towards women because that's my preference when it comes to, well, what I'm attracted to. During my practices on human anatomy, I always felt like my forms needed a character, or a proper face behind them. Most sculptures and art that you see out there do have a face, a person, a backstory to them. I wanted my art to be the same way. I could have made a new character up, but instead I relied on the one character that stuck with me since my earlier childhood. The victim of my anatomy studies happened to be Sunflower herself. During one summer in Spain, I got into the groove of using Sunflower for my nude anatomical studies. One day my family sat down at a cafe with some family friends, and I was drawing something normal into my sketchbook until the wind came along and flipped the pages of my sketchbook, almost exposing my artistic nudes. My sister Andrea noticed and laughed, prompting her to completely out me in front of a friend. She was understanding, though. She made me feel less ashamed about the art I was making. My family encouraged me when they found out. My abuela used to paint and made her own art. She never did anything similar to what I was doing, but she offered really good advice on how I could improve my forms. I felt good about the art I was making. During this time, I began thinking about creating a base story for Sunflower. Working with her so much, I wanted to write about who she was, where she came from, and what she liked to do. Upon seeing my nude art of her, someone, I can never recall who, asked me why she was always naked. To play on the comment, I decided that maybe she's just a nudist, and I regret how much that idea stuck to me. My family, being European, experiences more open-mindedness in our culture than most. I've always been in tune with the fact that Europe is culturally more comfortable and open with conversation of more intimate things. It was a mentality that I stretched over Sunflower herself, but the way I used it eventually changed in a negative way. To make a less desirable time in my life short, I ended up doing different things with Sunflower that I wish I didn't get into. I didn't share those particular things with my family, of course, but in my later adolescence, I seriously messed up the character. The 2020 pandemic only made things worse as I had just lost my first partner due to a long-distance relationship. I felt lonely and hopeless when the world shunned each other off out of caution, and Sunflower unfortunately became a private outlet. Her base story was long forgotten. Throughout the years, I attempted to rewrite it 3 times. I wrote it once on paper, tried to type it out, refreshed the idea in 2020, and then in 2023, everything changed. My life turned around for the better, and Sunflower ended up being cleaned up as a character, basically getting rehabilitated, designed to be more likable and actually normal. She finally lost the part where she was deemed to be a nudist, and that decision felt freeing. This was jabbed at with a joke within the story above. Maybe telling this will ruin people's view of the wholesome story I've provided, but to me, it's important. It's a message to me and to others that sometimes life changes in unexpected ways. Sometimes mistakes happen, and for a time you don't realize how much of a mistake something was or is. The best I could do for Sunflower was to just rewrite her story. So I did, and you just read it. Despite everything in the past, I refreshed everything, and I feel like I've truly changed things for the better forever. At least for me. I wanted to make sure things were kept wholesome because Sunflower's story is ultimately a love letter to my childhood. It made sense, and made me feel better about so much that I've ruined about myself and the character in years past. Sunflower became a statement about my origins, and no longer about what I messed her up for. At times, I tried to maintain some part of Sunflower to being about loving the body, finding no shame in our shapes, and about how natural the human body is, trying to reinstate the purpose in which I drew those artistic nudes so long ago. I managed to simply reference these rather regular and positive thoughts. However, in the story you read above, this is who Sunflower was always supposed to be. This is who Sunflower is. This is the Sunflower I want the world to be able to enjoy. And I really hope I've accomplished the task of writing the final draft of her official story well, and that I was able to entertain others with her. I want to use Sunflower as a character to show that rough things and changes happen in life. But you can always take the opportunity to turn things around for the better. Sunflower's story is about memories about ourselves. Through those found or untwisted memories, we can recognize that life changes us, and in turn, we can change the lives of others. Thank you so much for listening to this story.